if you have a business and you don't wake up every day thinking that you have all of the opportunities in the world available to you, you are doing business wrong. When you can learn how to sell and you can do it well, it is just the best skill in the world to have. You can just like click your fingers and then just go and get your cash.
The Get Rich Slow Club podcast is a collaboration between Tash Etchman from Tash Invest and Anna Christina from Perla. The Get Rich Slow Club acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land we record on. From coast to coast, across land, waters, and communities, we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Any advice is general and does not consider your financial situation, needs, or objectives, so consider whether it's appropriate for you.
Welcome to the Get Rich Slow Club podcast,
where we take you from beginner to confident investor,
where we can teach you everything you need to know about investing.
So come get rich slow with us.
Hello and welcome back. I have my friend here with us today, Peta from The Professional Babe, and I'm so excited for her to share her business journey and lots of her learnings with us. But before we get into her really cool business journey, we're going to do money wins and money losses first. What's yours, Peta?
I bought a sexy sofa.
Oh,
yeah.
What color is it?
It is like mustard gold velvet, but it's this like brushed velvet. It looks suede-y. I visited it so many times because it's an investment piece. And then it went on sale and it was like $2,000 off.
Wow.
And I'm like, I'm buying it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Money win.
It comes in like 8 weeks. I cannot wait to sit on it.
Oh,
so exciting.
Lovely. You're going to obviously post photos of this sexy couch. Yeah. Oh, that's a good one.
What's yours, Anna?
Mine is very suited to this episode today. I've officially signed papers for a business and have purchased a few things through my business bank account, such as like hosting and, internet things. But nonetheless, that's kind of cool. I'm going to be doing a free webinar and a course. So I'm just kind of doing some fun little things on the side. So this is a new venture for me, but an exciting one.
Yeah, perfect for today's episode because we've got Peta who's going to tell us all the wonderful business things.
Yes.
Proud of you.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. First step.
Yeah.
What about you, Tash?
Mine is I live near 3 Aldis, all within 6-minute drive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you an Aldi convert now?
Maybe, because in Perth, there were no Aldis near me or they were only in shopping centres and I hate having to park at a shopping centre to go grocery shopping. But now they're just everywhere in Melbourne. I feel like everywhere I drive, there's another Aldi. It's crazy.
Oh my God, let me know. Win. So much money savings. My mom is staying with me. Okay, here's another money win. But nonetheless, she bought, I don't know, something. She was making some kind of stew. So she bought some meat at the Coles and then she went to Aldi's with me and it was a difference of 40%. 40%. Wow. I couldn't believe it. She was like, oh, Aldi is so much cheaper. I'm like, yep. So imagine feeding 4 people, now 5.
Yeah. Money win when it's so easy. Do you shop at Aldi?
No, I was thinking I need an Aldi roadmap. Here is how you Aldi.
We'll have to go together. I'll take you.
Yeah.
I'll pick you up one day and we'll go.
It takes a little bit of adjusting to Aldi.
It feels just like there's no order. I understand that there is order because it's like the middle section.
Yeah.
With all the random things.
That you just avoid.
Well, no, I want to go in there and I want to touch it. Yeah, I know. And this is where everyone's like, you save money at Aldi. And I'm like, I don't because I come home with a bike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a walking pad. And they had reformers.
Yes.
Pilates reformer. It's crazy.
And seeds. They have seeds and potting stuff right now. Yeah.
They've got lots of things for older people, accessible, adaptable, gardening equipment, kneeling stools and stuff, which is so random, but great.
Yeah.
It depends when you go in there. They constantly have different things. I think it comes out every Wednesday.
Yeah.
So they're it's just a bit of a different setup. You have to get used to it. Also, you might not have the same thing that you got last time. You might be buying coconut water and then next week there's no coconut water. So you have to just adjust to.
You still have to go to 2 shops, I find.
This is terrifying.
I'll take you one day.
Exciting. Yeah. I need to rebrand it as an adventure.
Yes. Yeah. We'll adventure to the suburbs and go to Aldi.
We love you. If you want to sponsor us, let me know.
You've had such an interesting journey. I love that you've done so many different things. Do you want to start from the start and just tell us about some of the things you've done before?
Okay, how far into the start are we going? Because I was an Avon lady at 14.
I love this. Start there.
Yes.
At 14.
Yeah, I don't actually think that was legal, but this was before that they would check things. You know how you would just fill in paperwork and they'd be like, oh yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Mum and I went to the Royal Easter show and they had this Avon lady had a stand there and Mum's like, yeah, this would be fun, sign up. Didn't know what I was getting into. And I was an Avon lady at 14. It was very hard, obviously, selling anti-aging products to high school children. Like that didn't really work that well. So this was quite
Were you
short-lived.
younger than them too? Was you were
No, they were
selling
in my
them?
year. I was
okay.
like in like art class with
Right.
like samples.
And these kids who have like no money and you're like, hey, buy this cream.
Yeah, buy this $50 cream.
Yeah,
Isn't this
right.
beautiful? Yeah, it was very stressful as well. But I loved like looking through like the little catalogs.
Is this your first job? Like your first kind of way of making money?
Yeah, I actually think it was.
Well, Peter's never actually had a real job.
I know.
Is that true?
Well, I've had like casual employment. Like I worked at Candy Bar at the cinema.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I folded t-shirts at JJ's. Like there is like a skill that people do not know that I have. I am very quick at folding t-shirts of all different sizes and making them the same very, very quickly.
Do you have to use the cardboard? Or
No,
okay.
no, I can just, if you bought shirts in right now, it's like muscle memory. I could just get on the floor and just like do them.
I want to see your technique because
Yeah, is your cupboard really like neat?
You hang
at home?
everything.
I'm a hanger. I love hanging things. Yeah. I feel like I folded too much in my lifetime. It's like my hands are done.
Yeah.
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 Okay, cool. So Avon lady, then what happened next?
Yeah. Then, so my dad actually had a production company. So I would do like random like little modeling and extra things and I would help him out on stuff. But I'm not really going to count that because it didn't really feel too formal, where I feel that my first business was the Pilates studio that I started in, oh my gosh, 2009.
Crazy.
It's a long time ago. I tell people I've been in business this long that I have a workout DVD and I had television commercials, which feels like very retro. Yeah.
My mum used to have those Pilates DVDs. I remember like her and her friends would all do them in the living room and I was like a kid. It's crazy.
I had a yoga DVD as well, so I completely understand. But what blows my mind is that how do you go from just like opening a Pilates studio?
So, oh my gosh. Okay. So I never actually intended to open a studio. I always knew I wanted to teach. And it's so interesting how stuff changes like so quickly. I feel that we probably think that Pilates has been around for such a long time. Where back when I was studying in 2008, no one really knew what it was. They thought that you wore leotards. I think that they thought it was like physical culture or something. Like they were very confused by this.
It's like let's get physical, like that kind of.
And I was like, no, I want to be the next like Mari Windsor. And people were, especially in like a small town of Maitland, they were very confused by the notion of Pilates. And I finished my training. And there was like there was a couple, I think like 3 studios in Newcastle, but there wasn't really like any employment going. And I at the time wanted to work with dancers. So I was like looking for a space that I could hire and I hired the local bowling club. I think I paid like $27.50 an hour for room hire.
Wow.
And isn't it so funny that I remember that? I'd have to go in and everything felt like now you would do it all online, but no, I had to go and I think I actually had to pay them cash. They'd write out like a little handwritten receipt in a book. It was wild. And the reason I actually ended up getting a location is, do you know the amount of wakes that they host at bowling clubs?
Like funeral wakes.
Funeral wakes. So someone dies and then they have I think party is probably not the right word.
a celebration of life.
Yes, thank you. There we go. The celebration of life after the funeral. The amount of people that I have had to go in to the room and say, hi, we've got a Pilates class starting in 10 minutes because they overstayed their welcome. I would say I have done that at least 40 times.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like, I can't keep doing this.
I love that was the catalyst. I don't want to talk to people who are really sad anymore and tell them to leave for my Pilates class.
Yeah, because I would have to like get on my hands and knees and like crawl around and like pick up cake crumbs. And it was like a lot. There was a lot. You would have to like redo the room. And I'm like, I can't keep doing this. I'm getting really stressed out. And I was handing out flyers. I was going around to like all the dance studios handing out flyers. And I remember going into the studio, looking at it and being like, oh my gosh, this would be the perfect studio. And then because everything was advertised in the paper, because I think we had MySpace back then, but we didn't have like Facebook or anything. Yeah. I remember like looking at the paper and there was this big advertisement that the dance studio that I went to was actually moving locations. And my first thought was, oh my gosh, what's happening to their studio? And it's so funny because I had my mum with me and I just got in the car and we drove there. Like it was very much like, I didn't really think too much about it. I just got in the car and was like, we'll just drive there and have a conversation. And she was like, oh, do you want to take over my lease? And I was like, well, no, I don't want to take over your lease. I want like my own lease. And it's so interesting because I don't even know how I knew the right questions to ask or to know at the time, like what was a good idea or what wasn't a good idea. So I'm like, loop me in with your landlord. And then I think we were moving so fast. Then I was like, oh my gosh, hold on. I'm actually getting into like commercial real estate. This feels a lot like I'm 20. I do not know what I'm doing.
What do you mean it feels like you're 20? How old are you?
No, like I was 20. Like I was 20. Like it feels like a lot.
Yeah. Yes.
Like I had no formal business experience.
Yeah. How many classes were you teaching each week back then?
Probably like at the bowling club, maybe like 15.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you had a huge base already built up.
Yeah. Because I got like someone in because there was nothing to do back then in Maitland.
Right.
So I got someone who went to like a bank, who worked at a bank, and she was like, I'll bring all of my friends. So I would just get someone come who's then like, I'll bring all my friends. This is like really fun because my background was like dancing. So we did these like weird little cheerleader things as well. And it was very left of center at times that I think people found quite entertaining. And we always had a chat. So I'd be like, what are you having for dinner? How did you meet your husband?
Oh, I love this about this Pilates studio I went to in Canberra. They tried to really get to know you and they followed you on Instagram and they were like, oh, how was your flight to this place? And you were like, oh, this is so wholesome. Like I'll pay more to come here.
Yeah. And it's so funny that I was just, I think, naturally super inquisitive. And I was just like, no, I want to get to know you. Like tell me like all of the gossip about everything. So I would just ask everyone questions and they would be like, oh, I really just like, I think probably like the level of connection. Because when you go to a gym, you walk in and no one knows your name half the time. They're not going to say, how are you? Where I was like, oh my God, Pat, how was your lasagna? Was it good? And then someone else is like, I want the recipe. So there was a lot of like community connection with that.
Before it was cool to build a community.
Yeah.
You knew what you were doing. Yeah.
You're giving me such flashbacks because I'm from Vancouver originally, home of Lululemon. And I remember the very first shop that opened up of Lululemon where they used to do like yoga in the shop. They'd like move all the clothes. And that was it because yoga didn't exist it didn't exist. Of course, yoga existed, but it wasn't as commercialized. People didn't know what yoga was. So you're just giving me total flashbacks to the conversations of some of the people who would be like, hey, like, how was your lasagna? Like building community is so important. You like now looking back, I realize how special that was.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's so interesting. It's very like underrated for business. And I think that we just forget that if you are a nice person, people will want to spend time with you. And it wasn't like a tactic that I set out to do at the time being like, oh.
It's just you.
It was just
your intuition.
It was just me.
Yeah.
So what did you learn? You went from the bowling club, was it, to your actual studio? What were your lessons from that journey?
That commercial rent is very expensive and that you probably need to get some proper referrals. So I was really lucky that, I knew all of the expenses and how much everything was. I knew that there was going to be a bond. I was like, okay, this is going to be a bit stressful. And I don't know if it's changed now, but back then you would also have to pay the legal fees of your landlord to get the lease drawn up.
Oh.
Yeah. And we went to someone that was a lawyer but didn't specialize in this. And I ended up getting a $7,000 bill to do my lease. And I freaked out. And I was so lucky that mum got the piece of paper. She's like, I'll deal with this. And I think she got the bill down considerably and then she ended up paying for it. Because
thanks, Mom.
Yeah, because I think if I would have got that, I actually think looking back, just the amount of stress and dealing with everything, I don't really think I would have known what to do. So I think be across everything. And this is where having a mentor, or even if you're like, I'm not in a capacity to work with someone, read books, listen to podcasts and listen to people that tell you that information. Because back then, I think we had YouTube, but there wasn't really a lot of information out. If you wanted to network in business, you would go to BNI or the stuffy corporate breakfast meetings where people half the time didn't have a business. They just worked for the bank and they were there for networking. So I think I just really went in quite blind, not really understanding how to actually do anything. And I made a lot of costly mistakes just purely from a lack of understanding. So I think, one of the lessons was to probably just ask more advice or just be around people that have business that are probably going to tell you things how it is basically. You want the person that's going to be very realistic, who's yeah, it's going to be hard and you're going to have this, this and this, compared to the person who's like, oh my gosh, babe, you've got this. Like, you're going to be fine. Because when stuff isn't going well and curveballs come to you, that's really not helpful.
Yeah, you kind of need a mix of both and like a bit of that energy of just doing it anyway, because we wouldn't do anything if we were just worried about stuff all the time. And I kind of admire that you just did it. Like, here we go, I've hired my studio. I've hired my bowling hall. That's so great. Come join me. Like, amazing. But then, also having that savings buffer and asking for advice as well is so important.
Yeah. I think that there is something as well about, and what worked so well for me is I was just so naive that I had no idea, where I think it can sometimes be really challenging now with Instagram, that a lot of people think that they need like a perfect start, where if you saw the studio, it looks like a trap house. Like, I host events regularly and I always like pull the picture up of it. And I was like, people paid to be here. Like, just have a look at this picture. This is terrible. Like, there was grass growing through the walls. At one point we had bird lice. I didn't know that. Did you know that that's a thing?
No.
Bird lice. Yeah. It like was falling through the ceiling and I was like, why am I really itchy?
Oh,
and then the landlord was like, I'm not going to deal with that. So I had to then pay to get the roof fixed.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it was not Instagrammable. Like, it was really, I kept looking at it. I was like, well, the classes must have been really good if people wanted to be there. And over time, I would make things better. But it was very much like, I didn't get a business loan because what bank is going to loan me money? Probably no one. So it was very much relying on me teaching classes. And back then, these were like $10 Pilates classes. So I was relying on people doing that, and most clients were coming once a week. Some of them are coming twice. So they would buy their like 5 packs of $50. So you think about it, it's $50
Yep.
of 5 weeks worth of work with a client, and that's not profit. Like, you've got to take your tax out. You have to take everything out. So then I was like, I'm going to have to work really hard. And I got to a point where I was doing about 50 classes a week.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I had 150 regulars, which was a lot.
Did you hire anyone else to teach as well? Or was it all you?
So my mum decided that she wanted to become a Pilates instructor.
Oh, she wants a cut of your business.
Yeah, she was
She
like,
paid
this is fun. Yeah, she was like, this feels fun. So her background was nursing. So she was like, I'm going to become a Pilates instructor. And she started working for me. But it was so hard back then to get like good qualified staff. Pilates has changed quite considerably. We were actually recognized by health funds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So if you had like your diploma of professional Pilates, like people could go and they could claim their classes, and then they've just abolished that. So I could only hire people that had their diploma, and there was no one in Maitland that had their diploma.
So it was you and your mum?
Yeah.
Crazy.
So, and it's so interesting now. I'm like, I feel like everyone has that.
Yeah, it's pretty easy these days.
Yeah.
It doesn't, like, not easy, but it seems a lot easier to access. What made, like, I know you closed it down at some point. How did you come to that decision?
So I sold it.
Oh, okay. Amazing.
Yeah, so I sold it. So I had moved location. So we'd moved from the bowling club into the first location. And then I worked out really quickly. I'm like, we need to kind of run 2 classes at once. This just isn't viable. And not that I ran any spreadsheets or anything. I was very much just looking at money going in, money going out, and then how many people we kind of needed. And I'm like, yeah, we can, if we've got 2 classes going, we really can only have like 6 mats. 8's a bit of a stretch. If the mat class is a bit loud, studio gets impacted. So I'm like, we need like a bigger space. And I went for a walk and there was like a sign. It was so funny. It was only like 20 meters up the road on the other side.
I love how like you have to do all this physical stuff, right? Like now everyone just like Googles things online.
Yeah,
Like,
it's great because there's less options. You're like, oh, here it is. Like, I'm not going to compare 10,000 different options. You're like, here in front of me.
Yeah, it was so weird. And it was randomly like the old East Maitland Library. Like, it's so random. So we would tell people that when they would come, like, this is the old East Maitland Library. And I remember ringing up, I didn't even know how much rent was. And the landlord's like, I can actually come meet you there today. I remember he was eating a sandwich and he was just half chatting, like not even really paying attention to me. And he's like, do you want the space? And he told me the price. And I think it was like $3,500 a month. So it was a real jump. So I was paying for the first studio. It was like $1,200 a month, excluding GST. And then this was, $3,500. And I was like, okay, this is considerably more. And then I think the bond was 3 or 4 months rent. And I was like, we do not have that in the bank. And I said to him, I can't afford the bond. What are our options? And I just I don't even know where that came from to just ask him that. And he was like, where are you moving? How long? He just asked me some questions. How long have you been in business? I'm like, I've been in business for, I think it was like 3 years. And I said, we're just moving across the road. I need more space. And he looked at me and he said, don't worry about the bond. You can move in. And then I'm like, oh, sweet. But then he was like very threatening. And he was like, but if you don't pay your rent, I know exactly where you live and I know where your business is. And I was like, oh, okay.
Great.
Yeah. So I was like, oh my gosh, I feel that my landlord's going to kill me if I don't pay my rent. But he was really fair because someone else wanted the place as well. And they're like, we'll pay the bond. And he's like, no, I promised it to like Peter.
Oh, wow.
That's good.
Yeah. So was there for 5 years. And when actually 4.5 years, when we were approaching, actually, no, it was 4 years. I think around that time I was told to consider about like re-signing with the lease. So we had like a 5x5 option. So 5 years, and then you can re-sign another 5 years. But it's not where it differs with commercial rent. You need to kind of look at, I think, like the market value as well. So you could be paying something, but then if like market rent goes up, they'll say, well, no, that's not market rent anymore. It's going to be this. And it increases every year. Is it like with CPI or something? Your rent will go up? Yeah. So my friend around the corner, her rent went up considerably. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just not prepared to pay, because he wanted us to actually buy the building. Buy the space in the building. And I was like, oh, I don't want to buy the space. Like this feels like a big commitment. It was something like, I think it was like $500,000, like 500 grand, but I don't know if that was each space. But I'm like, I don't know if this feels like such a big commitment for something that I don't know if I'm going to be doing long term. And then if I want the responsibility of that. And it was very much for me, do I want to move locations? I didn't want to have to move like a third time. And do I want to like pay extra rent? No. Do I want to buy? No. And I'm like, okay, I think I've got to sell. And I had my brand Professional Babe at the time, which was like an editorial, and I loved it. I think the year before I'd actually been flown to France for free on an all expenses paid trip to write about skincare.
Amazing.
And I just was like working with brands like Priceline, Bobbi Brown. And I was like, I love this. And I think I felt really quite constrained to my hometown. I was like, I don't want to stay here. Like, I'm like, I know I'm a really good teacher, but I feel like that it's stifling my potential in a way to just still be teaching classes. Like if I really want to impact, I need to go global and I need to go so much bigger than what I'm doing. And it was a really tough decision, because you think about it, I spent 8 years building this up. I ended up selling it to my mum. So she then had it and she changed a couple things and made it a bit smaller, but it was so interesting that people were like, oh, well, you're Peter Pilates. What would you do? Like, what will you do?
Oh, the identity around it.
Yeah. And it's really interesting that, exactly, the identity piece, that so many people were like, but you're Pilates, what else do you know? And I'm like, this is really interesting how people have this belief that just because you've been a certain way for a certain amount of time, that's what you need to keep doing moving forward. And I was very much like adamant that I'm like, well, hang on. The business was successful. Yes, because like it was an amazing business, but it was me.
That's why I said like you can do anything and everything, right? Like it's funny how other people pigeonhole us into a belief.
Yeah.
Whereas, and then sometimes we take on that belief and believe like, oh yeah, maybe I can't do anything else. But I love that you're like, nah, moving on.
And that's such a huge part of your life. You're teaching 50 classes a week. Like that's a huge part of your life to then be like, well, what do I do with my time? Now I'm not seeing these people anymore. Like you can still go to Pilates classes, but it's a lot to just give up.
It was a lot. Yeah, it was a lot. I think I had, like, looking back, I'd actually had my business on the market for a little while. So I think I first advertised it in 2015 because I actually got really sick. I had glandular fever.
Oh no.
Yeah. I don't know if I told you this. I got glandular fever. I was sitting at work and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so unwell. And it kept like getting to a point where I would finish teaching like 8 classes and I was like, I feel like I'm actually dying. And mum's like, go to the doctor. And I'm like, so I went to the doctor and the doctor looked at me. She's like, you need to go and get a blood test like immediately. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then she rang me that afternoon and she's like, you've got glandular fever. And she's like, it's actually affected your liver and it's like 4 times the upper limit. She's like, so don't take Panadol, don't take anything. You need to come in like ASAP. And I ended up hospitalized that weekend.
And this is when your studio was on the market, or you hadn't thought about it yet?
No, this was before and we were so busy. And
yeah.
I like had no contingency plan because you think, oh yeah, I could get sick for a week or I could get sick for whatever. And I remember going into the doctor and she's like, you need to take 3 to 6 months off work. Like you are severely unwell.
How scary.
And then we had like a natural disaster in the Hunter Valley and a lot of my clients were like landlocked and I ended up in like this monumental amount of debt. because it's like I was so much reliant on my labor to get paid. And at this stage, I actually had 2 student trainees who were doing their Pilates course that were doing stuff in the studio. So I'm like, okay, cool. I can put them on more hours and I can put mum on more hours. But you don't consider that with like putting money away, like, oh, okay, yeah, you may for a week, but not 3 months. So I ended up having a month off work and I had to go back early. I think I was teaching maybe like 10 or 12 classes when I went back. And everyone's like, hey, I can't believe you're going back to work. And it's like, I have no other option. Like, what do you do? And then when I started to feel a bit better, I was like, I don't actually think that I can do this long term, because I think I'm going to get to a point where I'm just so physically burnt out from such, not even a physical job, but quite like a mentally demanding job when you're hearing about everyone's injuries and people that have had cancer that would be coming to the studio, and you would just take all of that on like a sponge.
And you're just like on the whole time as well. It's not like you can zone out while you're queuing people.
Yeah. It's just, it's a lot. And it's like, if you've got 6 classes, you are on for those 6 hours. So I think, I was like, this just feels like a good move to kind of advertise the business. That was in 2015. I had 3 sales fall through. So this was not, and this was just not, it was not easy. And one of them was just like a competitor, and it was a lot. So there was a lot of like mindset work that had to happen as like, I'm like, oh my gosh, another sale. This just feels like so stressful. And I was actually ready to just close it and walk away. Like, I think I was at a point where I'm like, I'm done. And then mum's like, no, I want to buy it. So I think my last day trading in that was like the 8th of April, 2017. And then I was like, I'm going to go into like full-time professional babe. And it was so exciting at the time because I actually was going to go into partnership with a really big retailer to do content for them. And then like 2 days after I was like full-time PB, they rang me and were like, we can't partner with you because you're not family friendly. Oh. And it's so, I was like, I remember like being in my car, like getting this phone call, and it's so interesting because I was so much more conservative than I am now. Like so much more conservative. And I was like, I can't believe that you've looked at my content, we've had meetings, and right before like this actually goes to go ahead, this happens. And all of this stuff had actually stopped. Like everything felt like it was moving forward. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like the ground has just shifted underneath me. I'm so stressed. And I used to have to adapt. I was like, Peter, you're going to be fine. You've been through this before. This is business. This is just what happens. You'll make it work. So I want to say that too, because I think a lot of the time people think that when you make a good move in business or this is the right thing, I think that people think that the stars align and everything works for you. But sometimes it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah. And you don't really see behind the scenes of everything. You're like, wow, that's so cool that you did that. But you're not seeing the failures behind that.
And I think especially that, when you have any kind of position when you're giving advice, I feel sometimes like you go through the most because you're meant to mentor people through stuff, because they'll come to you experiencing something and you're like, oh, I've been here before. Or, here is something that's worked for me, because you have that experience that then enables you to help other people. So at the time it was not fun, but I can look back now and I'm like, oh yeah, that made you really good at your job now.
Yeah. Like, I mean, every time I see you, I always see like so much confidence, and it's because you've gone through so much in your business life. So I sometimes like forget, like, people do have lows. Just because you do see their successes, they have hard times, or they might not have always been like, hey, I have this confidence because of all of the failures or all of the hard work that I've done beforehand, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice to hear the story behind that as well.
We were just talking about risk. I think this is a good time to speak about that. It sounds like you did lots of risky things to the outsider, like signing leases when you weren't really sure about it. Like you ended up in quite a bit of debt as well because it relied on you. Do you think business is really risky? How do you see that?
I think that everything has risk, and it just depends on the kind of risk that you're happy to participate in. So I know we were talking about this before we started recording, that there's really, I want to say it's sad, but am I surprised? I'm actually not. Working with business owners, I'm not surprised that the exit rate for business is like 14%, and 1,000 businesses a day in Australia close, which is high.
Yeah.
And that for me is like, I always hear people say, oh, going out on your own is risky. And I'm like, yeah, but having a job is risky. because you think about it, most Australians are employed by small business. So it's like if a small business goes under, they're not going to be like, well, we're going under, but we're just going to keep paying you because we're like a good person. Like you're probably not going to have a job.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, I always hear people say, oh, but there's risk in employment. I'm like, but there's risk in self-employment, but there's risk in everything.
Yeah. I've never viewed those stats in that way. Like I've seen them and I'm like, oh yeah, like most businesses fail with whatever it is in 5 years. Is that the stat? In 3 or 5 years?
Yeah. So most businesses, I think it's like around 50% will fail in 5 years.
And people are like, wow, business is risky, but people aren't extending that to like the people employed by those businesses. And that's such a good reframe to be like, everyone is affected by those stats, not just the business owners.
Yeah.
Well, you see it with a lot of redundancies, right? And potentially if you are your own business owner, you can sell it like you did, or you can pivot, or you can change. But if you're employed by someone, you have to start from scratch, right? Like you have to now find a new job unless you're willing to start your own business, right? Like there's going to be risk anywhere that you do it. It's just how you frame it, I guess.
One of my favorite stories of yours, I think when we first kind of met, you were wanting to buy a house or a property to live in, and you did it so quickly. And it was so impressive to see how powerful business can be to pull all those different levers to just buy property a lot quicker than someone who is self-employed. Do you want to share that with us?
Yeah. So it's really interesting that I always thought, I knew I wanted to be a homeowner. Like I have some friends and they're like, no, it makes financial sense for us to rent. Where I was like, no, I want a homeowner because I want to do outrageous things to my property that a landlord is going to be like, absolutely not.
And get a sexy couch.
Yeah, I wanted a sexy home.
Yes.
A really beautiful, sexy home. But it always felt like this future thing. Like it was like, like when you're in the desert. I don't know why I just said that because it's not like I've ever been in the desert.
No, like I don't have that feeling, but yeah,
like,
sure. When you're in the
like
desert.
a mirage and it just keeps like moving forward into the distance. It's like you can't get there. That's kind of what it felt like. And I'm like, I feel like I'm going to get to a point where I will move into the notion of home ownership. But what happened was in my building, there was an apartment for sale and I looked at the price and I was like, wow, this is such a good price. And I remember just my business is in a co-working space. So I walked upstairs to the mortgage broker that I always spoke to. And I was like, how do I buy a property? And he was like, this is just such a random conversation. He was like, well, come in, take a seat. And I'm like, I don't even know what I need. And he's like, well, we'll just run the numbers on some things. And I didn't realize that with self-employment, that it's based on like your tax return and how you've done in like a financial period like that. And I think every bank has different requirements. Like sometimes they need like 2 tax returns or different periods. But he said to me, he's like, you're going to need to have like a really good tax return. So this was May of 2023. Yeah, May of 2023. And he's like, let's look at the previous year's tax return. And he's like, oh, damn, if you only earned a little bit more money, we could have like started this loan process. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I'm like, well, how much would I need to make now? Like, what would this look like? And he's like, oh, yeah, you're actually pretty on track. You're pretty on track. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Well, what if I wanted to like get a bigger loan? Like, what would this look like? And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, I think the property was, like just under 300,000. And I was like, what would it look like if I wanted to buy something for like $500,000? And he's like, well, you're going to have to sell some more. And I'm like, yeah, just tell me, like, what does this look like? How much do I have to sell? I'm like, we've got a launch coming up. If you give me the figure, I'll just make it work. And he told me how much we had needed. And then I'd had to add more on because I had like a payment plan with the ATO. And he's like, okay, that has to be cleared. I had a line of credit. He's like, that has to be cleared. We had to look at everything. And there was quite a lot that had to happen. And I'm like, okay, no, I can do this. And he's like, okay. And I think this was it was like May 15th or something of 2023. We had a big launch coming up for June. And I remember emailing my accountant and I was like, we need to have a meeting. Like, here is the number that I need to make. How do we do this? And she was a brand new accountant and she was just like, I think everyone was not taking it seriously about me being like, no, I'm going to buy something. Like, I know that I have just decided this right now, but can you please tell me the number? And we'd floated some scenarios because she's like, I said, oh, what would it look like if we were to make that? Or what would it look like if I were to make this? And I was like, this is a conservative goal and this is a stretch goal. And she finished the call by saying, oh, good luck. But she didn't really seem that convinced. And the launch began, and it was for my program, Give Good Email. I think in business, sometimes you want to try the new thing where it's like, no, if you want to make the money, just go with the thing that people love that's really proven. And I didn't really change too much. I was just like, I need to be in really good energy. And I know at the time there was so much that I actually had to do that month. It was my mum's 70th birthday. So I was flying interstate a lot. And I'm like, nah, I'm still going to make this work. The property got sold, but in my head, I was like, there's going to be more. And randomly another off-market one came into the building from the same owner. So I'm like, let's just get my head in the game. I'm going to buy real estate. And this was very stressful, navigating that experience, but also having this launch. My assistant also left in that time as well.
Wow.
Yeah. So everything was happening. And I remember that there was a period where there was no sales for like a week. There was like none. And everyone's like, you freaking out. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like people are just deciding. They've been so excited that they've fainted. Like I'm like, let's like reframe everything. And I remember sitting at the couch at my mum's house and I think I made like $12,000 in like one evening of just these sales. And I'm like, yep, it's happening. Like it's going to happen. And the sales just kept coming through to a point where then I started freaking out, being like, okay, this is well exceeding what I thought that we needed. Do I now need to like make some like last minute tax deductions or something? And that all happened in the space of 6 weeks of me just deciding, I think I'm going to buy something and then making all of this money and then going through the process of buying something.
What a crazy mindset. And also like reverse engineering. You know, most people I think are like, this is my wage and this is that. But your mindset is like, this is my goal. How do I reverse engineer it to make it work for my goal? And I just like love that.
Yeah, I love that you've set yourself up so well where you can just be like, here, I can make more money and I'm going to be so dedicated to it and I'm just going to make more money. Because in your job, you can't just make more money unless you get a pay rise. That's such a long process usually. So It's such a handy tool to have. And I know it can be hard for some people, but it's amazing that you were just like, I'm going to do it. And then you did it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I think that like, I always say that if you have a business and you don't wake up every day thinking that you have all of the opportunities in the world available to you, you are doing business wrong.
Interesting.
Like if you're looking at it being like, oh, we have BAS or oh, we have this. I'm like, you literally could just go out and pull some money from the sky. Like you could just decide on something and then action that this evening. You have the ability to move so incredibly fast, which is just so exciting. And I think anything that you want can always be solved by just going out and selling something. That's obviously a skill that needs to be developed. And it's something I think probably works against a lot of business owners is they don't want to consider themselves a salesperson. Well, I love sales.
Right.
Yeah, and I also just love playfully telling people to like pay me money and like buy my stuff. I do it every day. Someone will say something and I'm like, you should just buy Give Good Email. And it's at a point now where I feel like it's actually unconscious that I say this. I don't even think about it, but it's something that when you can learn how to sell and you can do it well, it is just the best skill in the world to have. Because whatever you want, if you're like, oh, we want to like renovate our home or we want to go overseas or we want to do this. Okay, cool. Go and sell something. Like how fun is that? As you said, it's not like you need to like go and talk about this with your employer and get like a pay rise or be like, oh, we'll go and get a side job or whatever it is and go through that whole process. You can just like click your fingers and then just go and get your cash.
Especially when you really believe in what you're selling and you have spent years developing it and you're like, I know that this is great. Like I can go and confidently tell everyone that it's really great. Yeah. I love it. I love this energy.
So how do you get started? Like honestly, like for people listening who are like, oh, this is great. You know, I have a bit of an idea. I want to start something. I'm terrified because I've been working for, you know, a company my whole life. How do I just like find the confidence and go do it?
You just basically have to like make the decision and then just move forward. And I think the first thing is like, don't try to be motivated or like in a super positive frame of mind, which sounds really bizarre. But I think a lot of people think that they need to be 100% certain in order to move forward with things.
Oh, I like that because I never wanted to do this full time and now I'm here because it kind of just kept happening. But I was never like, wow, I really want to do this. It just kept going in the right direction.
But you also did it on the side of your job, which makes it a bit safer, right? As well?
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's just, I think it's if you try to have certainty, I think then the problem is you get certainty around things kind of working for you, but then if something goes away, then you are like, oh my gosh, this feels up in the air. I need to kind of like move backward. And this could be something where like you get the support of someone who then changes their mind. Like your husband could be like, yeah, let's like go for it. This sounds amazing. and he's like really quite steady. And then it could be him the next day being like, well, have you really thought about this? So it's like if you're relying on all of that, that's just going to make you feel, I think, unsteady. So just move forward being like, I would say like 50% sure, because there's also a real skill around when stuff doesn't work well and it goes badly, moving through that. This is something with clients. I never helicopter parent them. I kind of like them to fuck up a bit, because if they have everything working for them and then 2 years down the track, something stuffs up, they have a huge breakdown. And I see this a lot with people that have had a lot of success early on and then something breaks and then they just fall into a heap, and then they use Instagram like their diary and they're crying. And I'm like, someone needs to take your phone off you because you shouldn't be doing this online. So don't be worried about things kind of like breaking initially, because that's okay. Like you're an entrepreneur now. Like this is amazing because you get to move through that challenge and grow as a person. And this is going to aid you so much in the future. So I think that would be the first thing is the mindset, because I think people often wait for everything to feel perfect. I think the second thing would be to like validate your idea. And there are a few ways to do this. You can kind of see like what's already out there. There is a belief that stuff that is really new is so amazing because it doesn't exist, where sometimes if it's so new, you have like a lot of work trying to educate people around it, where the thing is, it's like anyone can open a coffee shop and it's going to be successful because people know what coffee is. They're not like, try this random beverage and you have to sell the idea to them. So if it exists, I think that that's an amazing idea as well. And just go and like look and see what is out there. My preference would be to clients to not invest too much money at the start. So don't go and pay someone $10,000 for a website. Just start to do things yourself, because you're going to kind of figure things out in the process. I've seen a lot of people who have invested a lot of money on branding and a website and all of these things to then get 3 months in and then be like, oh, we actually need to change this a bit. And then they're investing more money. I think the more that you can bootstrap things at the start and learn things yourself, you're going to become such a better business owner. So don't think that you need like a super incredible, sexy website. You can just start with an Instagram account and just start to like build up a following and use the existing audience that you have as well. And I think that that's something that people forget, is that we are surrounded by people every single day. And I think that we're like, oh, I don't want to invite people that follow my personal Instagram or my personal Facebook or my LinkedIn, but just invite them in. Because you'll be actually really surprised at the people that you think don't care, that will become your biggest advocates, that then could know someone that could actually really help you in the future with your business. So I think that would be another thing as well. Like surround yourself with people that are also doing what you want to do. So listen to podcasts, get books, and it doesn't even need to be like, let's just stick with a coffee shop example. Like I want to open a coffee shop, that you need to look at someone that has this like hardcore hospitality background, but it could be someone that you're like, I actually really love how they show up and how they hold themselves in business. I think that you need to have similar values. I think that that's a really big thing. This is something that I talk a lot in business with like Alex Hormozi. And I have some clients who are like, oh, his advice is terrible. Like he just works. And I'm like, yeah, but you have a lifestyle business and you have 2 children and you don't want to work 50 hours a week. You want to make money working 15 hours a week. I'm like, his advice is going to be conflicting because he builds to sell and he doesn't have children.
And he wants to scale.
Yeah, he wants to scale. So you need to just be conscious of, I guess, where you're getting information from. And if that is also serving like the vision that you want for your future and kind of how you want your business to look as well.
I love all this.
Yeah, so many good tips.
So many. I want to bring it back to sales.
Yeah.
Because what you said is like you love selling, and ultimately if you have any kind of business, you need to have sales. You need to be selling something. What about sales? What is like the one thing that people need to do?
I think that people have this really, and I guess it would be like with money. People have all of these beliefs around sales. Like, I don't want to be salesy. And I'm like, but what is salesy? And they're like, but I just want to politely put my offer out there and have people buy it. And I'm like, that does not happen.
Yeah, what's polite? Yeah.
I'm like, that just doesn't happen. I'm like, you love to be sold to. And they're like, no, I don't. I'm like, yes, you'd love to be sold to. Like, and I think this is where you just need to reframe things and have different data come in. And make sure that you have more evidence that's working towards I love to be sold to compared to I don't love to be sold to. Because I think one thing we never want to do is like, if you imagine just you have two books, right? One is I love to be sold to, one is I don't love to be sold to. It's very easy for us to look at things and write that in that book of I don't love to be sold to, because we think about every bad experience that's ever happened and every terrible sales experience, and we write that in that book. What you need to do is just grab the book and throw that one out. And we're just going to focus on the one that's like, I love to be sold to. So an example of this is when you go to a restaurant and the waiter comes up and they tell you about the specials. You're not like, go away. Like
I asked them to order for me. I was like, which one's better out of those two specials? Can you just surprise me is what I say.
Yeah, like you're basically saying sell to me and what do you recommend? Okay, cool, I trust you with that.
Like any kind of special ever, when it's a good deal, you're like, yes, thank you for telling me about your good deal. I'm going to go book that now.
But not even a good deal. Like just.
Yes, I need that now.
Yeah. Like, I mean, in the same way I've heard you talk about your own courses and I'm like, oh, she believes in it. I believe in it. You know what I mean? And I don't feel like you're selling to me. I know, like I'm listening to you get excited about the value that you provide. You believe in it. And if you believe in it, then it makes it so much easier to talk about it, right?
And she's made it easier for you because you don't have to go research it too much. Like I like when someone tells you exactly who they're selling to and you know whether it's for you or not. I don't want to have to go through a website and be like, who is this actually for? Is it for me? Is it for someone else? But if you have that information, it makes it so much easier.
Yeah,
exactly. And I think you brought up a good point, because I think when people don't like selling, they start to hide information. And it's like, no, like you want to make this really, really clear and have it really obvious. So for people that are actively seeking, and this is every day people are seeking to buy things, that they're like, yes, this is perfect. This is for me. You can also reframe this as well, that I feel that when we go to sell, we're chasing a yes. Like we're chasing people being like, yes, I will buy the thing, where, you know, no one converts 100% of the time. They just don't. No one does. And if they do, they're lying.
Because you're not making something for everyone. Like you're not for everyone. Yeah.
Exactly. And if they convert 100% of the time, they're probably not having enough sales conversations. So this is where, you know, for me, I'm like, well, if I'm looking at average sales conversions, it's what, like 2%. And I can then have 100 conversations and I'm going to be told no 98 times. So instead of just looking for the two yeses, I'm like, okay, I'll be told no 98 times. And then when I get a no, I actually am like, oh, cool. Yeah, tick that off. No.
Yeah.
And instead of like looking for the yes and then feeling like let down. So you can start to like trick your brain to do things like that as well. And that I found in my early stages of business really helpful. When I had the studio, we'd sell on the phone. That's terrifying. People would ring up or you would answer the phone and I would be in the supermarket and it would be Marge being like, I want to start Pilates, and I would have to literally sell to her as I'm doing my grocery shopping. So do that enough. And I think that repetition as well. I like my clients to sell every day. And like, if you can get paid every day, you will have an amazing business. I of course love email marketing. I have an email marketing program. So this is a way that people can, of course, do that at scale all of the time by using email to help. But, you know, just if you can, try to sell every day and chase the no. I think that is a big thing. That's really helped me.
That's a big takeaway, a good takeaway. Just chase the no. Yeah.
And don't take it too personally as well. It's just not for them at that time. It doesn't mean they hate whatever you're doing, or maybe they do, but that's also okay.
Yeah.
This has been a great conversation. If people want to come and work with you or find out more about you, where can they find you?
So you can go to my sexy little website, which is professionalbabe.com. I'm on Instagram. I'm attempting to be on TikTok.
I've seen you more there recently.
Oh, okay. I don't really think I'm doing great at it, but that's okay. I'm also on LinkedIn. Peta Serass. Where else am I? Oh my God, I've got a podcast.
Yes, you do.
I keep forgetting I have a podcast. I was like, oh, what's that? The podcast, The Business Fondle.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love your branding.
Yeah, everyone should go follow you on Instagram because there's some really fun stories in there. I love it.
Thank you.
Yay, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us. If you found this episode helpful, please rate us 5 stars, write a review, or share with a friend. If you're new to investing, make sure to listen to our first 10 episodes. Follow us at Get Rich Slow Club or Tash at Tash Invests, or me at Ana Cristina.
This show was brought to you by Natasha Etchman, who is an authorized representative 1299881 of Guideway Financial Services, AFSL 420367, and Perla, who is an authorized representative 1281540 of Sanlam Private Wealth, AFSL 337927. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to investing. So make sure you check out our financial services guides and read the product disclosure statement and target market determination for any investments you're considering. See our show notes for more info.